So, welcome everybody. Thank you for downloading this video, where we're going to be talking to one of the most exciting brands in our market at the moment in respect of video surveillance technology. We've dealt with Cathexis, and Dene Alkema is going to join me today, and we're going to address a couple of questions. Shouldn't be longer than 10 or 15 minutes or so. So we hope that you get value out of it, and ask that you call Dene Alkema directly afterwards. At the end of this video, we will have a link to his website, as well as his email and phone number, and you can contact Dene right away. They're working. They might be working from home, but they're working. Their minds are working. Their product development is working. They're ready to access the market within the confines of the regulations. So welcome, Dene, and thanks very much for being with me today on this video.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's a real pleasure to partner with you guys. Just talking around, how do we continue living in a COVID and a post-COVID world?
Yeah, 100% correct. And what's great about a brand like yourself is that you continually adapt. It's no more of just providing more of the same. And I'd be interested later on through this discussion, maybe some of the new exciting things that you're doing. But let's start off with a generic issue, and this is a whole issue of integration. And we know that inside residential estates, they have similar subsets of systems installed, and there's a strong need to, and lots of discussion around the whole notion of integrating these systems or subsystems to improve operational efficiencies on an estate. We're very interested to get your view on that and what your feelings are.
Yes, thanks. Integration has been a part of our core value proposition or value offering, if you want to look at that, for a large number of years. And we feel that as a product, that's probably one of the key differentiators as a South African product that you would find specifically within the space of video surveillance, which is where we play. Cathexis over the last 10, 15 years have been continuously integrating various different other technologies. And the whole drive behind that is to be able to add more value, not just through saying that we can integrate it, but really to be able to address real issues within the confines of the estates, which is what we're talking about here. From a Cathexis perspective, being South African, we've been able to introduce, through our relationships with a lot of other companies, very strategic integrations that's unique to South Africa. So it's other South African products. What we do find, and it's great as a South African product to say that, is that we do find that a lot of other South African products that have got a good reputation with the market and long-standing availability is that they do tend to be present on a lot of the estates as well. So if we're talking about Impro access control, that's one of the products that gets used quite a lot. If we talk about two other local products, would be Nentec and JBA electric fencing solutions. Those are also two great South African products. But even beyond that, if we're starting to talk about the international brands like Gallagher, from a fencing and access control perspective, Access Communications, which is also one of the ARC partners, those are all fantastic products that get utilized on these different estates. So if we're now saying, well, we've got between 4 to 8 technologies that we are using on the estate, how do we ensure that we get more out of these products? And at the end of the day, specifically because first and foremost they get used for safety and security.
Yes,
we want to ensure that the operators and the site supervisors, your security managers, are informed about what's happening on the estates, and we feel through integration we can do that. So in other words, a 10-kilometer fence line might be something that gets a vehicle might pass through and check it out, but they might miss that there's vegetation and growth, and it might be an alarm condition that comes through on the electric fence side. Through integration, we'd be able to say, well, here's a camera that's looking down the same fence line. We as Cathexis would automatically know that that zone and this camera is associated, and we'll bring the right camera view in front of the operator to be able to say, yeah, it's vegetation, or they're just short, or there's nothing wrong. And the flip side of that is that in this specific event, you can then say, well, we can see there's vegetation. We don't need to send out a patrol to go and see whether there's a breach. We've visually verified that there is something that needs to be done, and it's not too serious. And you allocate the right resources to address the issue. And this becomes even more important, specifically when there's an attempt to breach your perimeter, is that the right camera and the right information gets placed in front of the operator that ensures that they've got situational awareness of what actually is happening at the time, specifically when you send out patrols and response teams, that you could be able to give them amounts of people there. Can we see whether they're armed or not? And all of these very relevant real-time information is things that the system can automate and ensure that the operators make a lot better and a lot better informed decisions a lot more effectively and efficiently. So integration really adds value. Additional to that, if you look at the access control environment, with the implementation of the IDEMIA touchless readers, which is the MorphoWave readers, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
We've seen a great adoption within the estates of those technologies, and one of the challenges was that at one of the estates is that the residents were complaining that the readers don't work. And you really, once you actually looked at the video, we could actually pull up the video footage based on the transactions we received from the access control system on those MorphoWaves, and you can see the resident coming in and making very funny wavy patterns with their hands, which is a usability issue, and the resident had to be taught how to utilize the product properly and effectively, and it helped management resolve a lot of touchy subjects with the estate, specifically because sometimes there's a bit of a resistance to adoption to new technologies, and it just helped them to ease through that. So integration's got various use cases in how we can improve just the running of the estate itself.
That's so interesting that you used, or you could use video surveillance in your technology to troubleshoot a problem which probably would never have been identified, because one can't recreate the human reaction to something. And it was through your technology that you could pick up a problem at the very source and resolve it before you go looking all over the estate to try and solve the problem. That's so interesting.
The resident in question, I think, had a few alcoholic beverages beforehand.
Oh, I see.
I will not mention the estates of that.
No, don't.
But these are real issues. At the end of the day, it creates major frustration for the management of the estates itself, where they need to deal with a sensitive issue. They can't dismiss the issues raised by the resident. This just takes away all of the issues and brings forward facts, and it helps them to really deal with the issues at hand.
All right, so fantastic. So let's talk specifically Cathexis, and let's talk specifically, if you can, on some examples how video evidence could be used. Video evidence could be used in a post-COVID world, other than your normal uses. I think we got that. So in a post-COVID world, how could our member estates use video evidence? I love that word, in a new world.
Yeah, the question with COVID is that's going to become one of the more pressing matters. Is really who's had contact with whom. Specifically, when we want to try and identify hotspots, where if you remember back to one of the first South Africans that was tested positive for COVID. I mean, they came back, I think, if I'm not mistaken, from a holiday in Italy. Correct. And it took a while, but the big question was, who else were they in contact with with their flights through Dubai, back down into Durban, going up to Hilton. And within the estate itself, you know, I think we still are in the process of understanding who, you know, step one, whose responsibility is it to be able to do this? To be able to give a track and trace of where people have moved around and how they've moved around, who they've been in contact with.
Yeah.
From the estate's perspective, you know, once again, we're in the beginning stage of this, but specifically when you've got a golf course, you've got an area where members can have contact, can have drinks. You know, once all of those things open up for business again, conference centers is another great example of that. The question is now, well, would we be able to identify where members came in contact with each other if it was to light that a member had contact with each other? So we've got a couple of tools within our system where we should be able to, specifically if the member entered into the area through access control, that we can very quickly find where the member entered and exited, and then track and trace them throughout the site quite effectively using some of the tool sets that we have. So that's one of the ways that we do that. Additional to that, we've seen very exciting technologies come to the fore in response to COVID. One of our facial recognition partners have developed algorithms that allows them to be able to automatically identify faces, and you can highlight a face, then track a face through a site, and also then use the algorithm to identify, you know, the dwell time of the specific person, and if they've been in an area close enough to someone else for longer than a certain period. So I think there's very exciting technologies coming out, and the discussion is obviously much larger than just, you know, our product. This is in conjunction with a lot of our partners. We can see very exciting technologies come to the fore to start trying to address this issue around how do we deal with COVID and how do we live in a post-COVID world.
So you've just demonstrated to me in the last minute or so that video surveillance doesn't have to be a reactive thing. Video surveillance doesn't have to be something that you would go back and check on a video that was set up like a camera when a car comes in. That one could use your technology in a proactive way to check on things that we are expected to check on and report on, like tracking and tracing. And what better way than to use tools that we've already got in our normal environment for checking on security and fence breaches and all of these good things. We can now, in a post-COVID environment, be really, really proactive. And there's something else I meant to mention. You mentioned South African a number of times. And that for me is absolutely key. You're a very proud South African company. They're partners with other proud South African companies. And I know our member states are very, very concerned with that. You know, we want to deal with our own. Any additional points on the notion of being owned or being a South African company dealing with South African company? We too are a South African company.
Yeah, the one benefit, just from a commercial perspective, for South Africans to deal with South Africans is that we deal in South African rands. And having a look at what the exchange rate has done in the last month or two only, you know, it does have a real, it's one thing to pay for a product or a service or a device once off, but if you consistently do at points need to add or invest or upgrade what you have, and then questions around the cost of ownership really starts to play a big role in any environment, really. Yeah. And one of the discussions that we had, I think in that technology brain trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the things that came to the fore is the long-term sustainability of being able to afford all of these different things that we need to add to an estate. So we now are raising issues around moving from your border of your estate into your estate, where you're still offering services to your community inside and outside of the estate itself. And you need to deploy additional things that do cost money. Budget are going to shift and change to some extent, and we need to be conscious of that. So dealing with South African companies do have benefits, is that there's a lot more consistency in how those costs increase or decrease in what you need. But beyond that, it's not just a South African discussion. As a South African company, I mean, we export most of our products to overseas markets, and with that also comes partnerships that we have internationally and locally as well with other international brands. And part of the brain trusts that the ARC that we are part of, there's various relationships that we've had over numerous years. So we're pulling out of our local partnerships. We're also investing and working together with our international partners as well. So you know, from a Cathexis perspective, we really try and offer the best of breed solutions to our to members of the estates at large as well.
And of course, the other conversation that has been distributed, you're referring to, was what ARC termed as its Technology Brains Trust, where we had yourselves and some of the other partners that you mentioned. There were about 7 or 8 of us online where we spoke about integration, and you all had the opportunity of presenting what your value proposition is. So I would encourage our members and watchers of this video to have a look at that one as well, and we'll perhaps include that link when we download this one as well. So, you know, I love the South African idea. I love the South African owned notion. So that's excellent. So finally then, on the topic of creating safer environments within the confines of our estate, that's for staff, residents, visitors, everyone. We highlight this often. What can Cathexis do to assist in this creation of a safer environment?
Some of the requirements that we've seen out of some of our member states, one of the big burning issues for them is how do they maintain the adherence to speed regulations within the state itself. Now, as a body, there's and yourself and your team can talk a lot more effectively to these regulations that estates need to adhere to. But how do you enforce that? And I think that's one of the biggest issues, is the enforcing of all of these different regulations that we need to adhere to. Speed is one of them. One of the member states recently embarked on testing our products just as a use case for seeing whether people stop at stop streets. And we were able to use our speaker algorithms to effectively do that, which there's nothing like real evidence. There's nothing like evidence that shows a car that did not stop at a stoplight or stop street, or that sped in an area. So we've got algorithms that can detect that, that can put a notification in front of an operator with the relevant information and images that allows the estates to basically follow a process, whatever that may be for them, in dealing with that. One of the other requests that we've seen coming through from the estates is that they want the ability to see the average speed between different points within the estate. So very similar concept to what we see in the Western Cape highways on the N1 and the N2, is to be able to do an average speed between 2 points. So that's something that we've recently finalized our development. It should go into our next ship of software that goes out, which once again will do something very similar. So specifically estates that's got quite long distanced roadways where they don't want to put cameras down like speed bumps every now and again, because that might add to the cost. They just want to be able to see, has this guy driven 80 k's per hour over the stretch of road of a kilometer or two, and be able to address that more effectively. So really talking right down to enforcement of that. So, you know, right back to our first question that you had, you know, we really want to try and add a lot more value to infrastructure and expense that an estate would already have. And there's much more that we can discuss out of that, you know, in maybe future.
Fantastic. This has been fascinating stuff. I've learned so much, and I know our member estates will as well. So, so I've had together with me Dene Alkema, who's with a great organization, powerful brand called Cathexis in the area of video surveillance technology. And I've just learned that it's not only from a reactive point, but a proactive point as well, or a proactive stance. So, Dene, well done. Thank you for being with me today, and you have a good and safe day. You know, I say stay at home because that's what we should be doing, but I know we're all urging and wanting to get out there. So thanks again for your involvement today.
Thanks, Jeff.